I used to think we were the couple everyone envied. My name's Rachel, I'm 36, and I've been married to my husband Adam for 11 years. We have 2 kids, a lovely suburban home in Colorado, and until recently, I truly believed I had it all. Adam worked in sales for a regional tech distributor, which meant he traveled a lot, at least once a month, sometimes more, always to client meetings or product conferences. It wasn't ideal, but we made it work. I was proud of how we kept our relationship strong despite the distance. We'd FaceTime every night, send each other good morning texts, and he always brought something small back from his trips. A little souvenir, a snack he knew I liked, something to say. I was thinking of you. I never questioned it. Why would I? Adam was charming, reliable, funny. The kind of guy who made friends easily, who helped our elderly neighbor shovel snow, who coached our son's little league team when he was home. Everyone loved him. I loved him. We had our share of problems like anyone else, arguments over money, tired evenings when we barely spoke. But I never thought those cracks were more than surface level. Until one trip changed everything. It started with something stupid. His toothbrush. I was packing his overnight bag because he was running late for the airport, and I realized his usual travel toothbrush wasn't in the bathroom drawer. I figured he left it in his DOP kit, but when I checked, it wasn't there either. No big deal, right? But then I noticed something odd. The toiletry bag smelled like women's perfume. Not just a whiff, it was strong, floral, expensive. I froze. My first thought was stupid. Maybe it rubbed off on him at the airport? But the scent was inside the bag. Like something had been stored in there. A bottle? A scarf? I didn't say anything. Not then. I told myself I was being paranoid. That maybe I was just feeling off because we'd barely connected that week. That maybe I was hormonal. But a seed had been planted, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I started paying attention. The next few weeks, I noticed little inconsistencies. The name of the hotel on his receipt didn't match the one he told me. His calendar said Chicago, but the hotel was in Indianapolis. When I asked, he laughed it off. Oh, they changed the venue last minute, didn't I tell you? No, he hadn't. But again, I let it go. I didn't want to be that wife. The suspicious, insecure wife who thinks every business trip is a cover for an affair. I wanted to believe in him. In us. But I couldn't stop myself from digging. The real turning point came 2 months later. Adam had left his tablet at home, the one he used for presentations, usually synced to his phone. I wasn't snooping, I swear. It buzzed on the kitchen counter, and when I glanced at the screen, I saw a calendar notification. Not for a meeting. It just said, dinner, 7 p.m., Harper's. That caught my eye because Harper's is a fancy restaurant. Not the kind of place you go alone on a work trip. And more importantly, he wasn't supposed to be traveling that week. According to him, he was working late at the office. My heart pounded. I opened the calendar app. There were recurring entries labeled with vague titles. H meeting, client dinner, hotel pickup. They all lined up. Same days of the month, same pattern, like a second life mapped out in code. That's when I knew. Something was going on. And I was going to find out exactly what. I couldn't sleep. Every night, I stared at the tablet he accidentally left at home, imagining him sitting across from another woman at some cozy restaurant. Who was she? How long had this been going on? What lies had he told her about me and our kids? That morning, I made a decision, no confrontation until I had proof. I turned on the tablet and opened his email. Thankfully, he was still logged in. What shocked me most was how carefully he had hidden everything. He used a separate Gmail account for personal correspondence, and every message was being automatically filtered into a folder titled Archive. It wasn't even visible right away. But once I opened it, everything unraveled. The emails were from a woman named Tessa. They started off professional, like legitimate business exchanges, but quickly shifted. With every message, things got more intimate. You looked amazing on Saturday, he wrote. I can still smell you on the pillow. I almost dropped the tablet. He called her my Tessa. Said he was counting the days until their next trip. That he didn't know how much longer he could keep living a double life. I kept scrolling, photos. Hotel selfies. She was wearing his shirt, he was kissing her neck. I felt sick. 11 years of marriage, 2 kids, countless sleepless nights, cross-country moves for his career. And all along, he was building a second life. At first, I wanted to storm into his office and scream. But I knew better. Emotions would only cloud my judgment. I had to be smart, calm. So I started collecting everything. Screenshots of the emails, backups of his calendar, photos, receipts. I bought a hidden camera and installed it in the living room, aimed at the front door. I knew he had another business trip planned for next week, and now I was sure he wouldn't be alone. I checked the credit card activity. He had booked the same hotel he'd stayed in before. 2 nights. 1 room. The listing said king bed. My hands were shaking as I read the details. I felt rage, heartbreak, and an unexpected clarity. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It became a mission. He thought he was clever, that his scheduling tricks and fake messages would keep me blind. But he underestimated me. And this time, I'd be ready for his little getaway. The night before his trip, I watched him pack with a kind of detached fascination, like I was observing a stranger go through the motions of a life that used to be ours. He folded his button-downs and polos with a precision that once seemed endearing, but now felt mechanical, almost rehearsed. He double-checked his charger, laptop, toothbrush, all while casually asking if I needed anything from San Diego, tossing the city's name out like it meant nothing. I smiled and shook my head, playing the part, nodding along as he mentioned imaginary co-workers and this made-up keynote speaker who, apparently, was going to change the way their company handled regional logistics. I kept my tone light, joked about ordering takeout while he was gone, but inside, I was screaming. I already knew he wasn't going to San Diego. At least not for work. I had the proof, flight info, hotel confirmation, digital tracking, and most importantly, the hidden photos from the tablet he forgot to lock. I stayed up all night, too restless to sleep. I watched the clock until it hit 5:12 a.m., and just like always, the front door closed. I gave it 60 seconds, then got up and grabbed the bag I'd hidden under the bed. My best friend Casey was already waiting outside in her car. She didn't even ask questions when I told her what I'd found. She just said, "We're burning this to the ground." We headed straight to the airport, and everything checked out. The ticket he booked was real. The gate matched the itinerary I'd found in his email. Except this wasn't about business. This was about her. Tessa. I'd found her name months ago in his phone, buried under the name, Terry from IT. I only got suspicious after seeing her photos in the deleted folder, along with those cringy texts where he called her his real piece. Now I was going to meet her, or at least watch her. When we landed in San Diego, I scanned the crowd until I saw him. And there he was, standing just outside baggage claim, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. But not at me. At her. She looked like she stepped out of an Instagram ad. Blonde, tall, tanned, wearing a designer sweatsuit and those oversized sunglasses people only wear when they don't want to be recognized. But I recognized her. She walked straight into his arms, kissed his cheek like she'd done it 100 times. My chest tightened. My knees almost buckled. But I hit record on my phone. Casey stood nearby pretending to take selfies, catching every angle. We watched them walk to the curb hand in hand, like they were headed for a weekend getaway. I checked into the same hotel, 2 floors below them. That night, I heard them through the vent. Laughing, talking, making plans. Like they were something real. Like I wasn't real. But I waited. The next morning, I printed one of the photos from the airport and slid it under their door. No note. No threats. Just the image of their betrayal captured forever. I imagined his face when he saw it. How fast his heart must have dropped. How he must have looked over his shoulder, wondering who was watching. That afternoon, I saw them arguing in the hotel lobby. She had her suitcase. He was trailing behind her, pale, desperate. She shoved the photo in his chest. She was done. He'd promised her things he couldn't keep, just like he promised me. And now both of us were walking away. I didn't leave the hotel immediately. I stayed 2 more nights, not because I needed more evidence. I already had enough to dismantle his entire life, but because I wanted to sit with the silence, to feel the weight of the truth settle in my bones. For years, I had doubted myself, questioned my instincts. Every time I felt something was off, he'd gaslight me, make me feel crazy. "You're being paranoid," he'd say. "You watch too many crime documentaries." But now, standing in this city that was supposed to be his conference destination, I realized how long I'd been living in a fantasy he carefully curated to keep me docile, blind, forgiving. I ordered room service, scrolled through our old messages, and watched the videos I took of him and Tessa over and over, each frame etching another crack into the lie he built around me. I thought about our kids, how he kissed them goodbye every time he left for these so-called trips, how he promised he was working hard for our future, when really, he was building memories with another woman in another life. I remembered the time I stayed up all night helping him prepare slides for a presentation he never gave. The nights he called me from the hotel bathroom, whispering sweet nothings while she lay in the bed next to him. I even remembered that one call, the one where he told me he missed me so much it hurt. And I had believed him. I had believed every damn word. On the last night, I went down to the hotel bar, ordered his favorite drink, bourbon, 2 cubes of ice. I sat there for almost 2 hours, just thinking. Not crying, not angry. Just thinking. Planning. I knew I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront him in some dramatic movie scene way. I wanted to be smarter than that. I wanted my revenge to echo. So when I flew back home, I didn't tell anyone. Not even him. I got in around midnight, slipped into bed next to my husband like I hadn't watched him kiss another woman 48 hours earlier. The next morning, I made him coffee, kissed him goodbye, and told him I hoped his presentation went well. He smiled and said it was productive. Liar. That same day, I went to a lawyer. Quietly. Thoroughly. I learned my options. I gathered my documents. I began setting the trap. Bank statements. Insurance records. Joint accounts. I made copies of everything. Then I met with a private investigator, not to gather more evidence of his affair, but to trace his hidden finances. If he had the nerve to cheat, he probably had the nerve to hide money too. And I wasn't leaving this marriage empty-handed. Not after 15 years of loyalty. While I did that, I also started therapy, not for the relationship, but for me. To rebuild the woman he spent years chipping away at. To stop blaming myself. Because no matter how many ways I replayed it, this wasn't my failure. This was his disease. And he was the one rotting from the inside. The hardest part? Pretending. Pretending I didn't know. Pretending we were okay. But I wanted him to feel safe. I wanted him to think he got away with it, so that when I finally pulled the rug out from under him, the fall would be so much worse. Every morning, I woke up next to him and smiled like nothing had changed, when in reality, everything had. I watched the way he kissed our daughter on the forehead, how he ruffled our son's hair and said, "Be good for Mom," like he wasn't the one shattering their world behind closed doors. It was like observing a stranger, someone wearing my husband's face. The deception ran so deep that it almost fascinated me. How effortlessly he lied, how calculated his movements had become. I knew what was coming, but I wanted him to be comfortable, to be confident, to feel untouchable. That was the only way my plan would work. So I played the perfect wife. Cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his stupid jokes, even surprised him with a bottle of that overpriced whiskey he liked. And the whole time, I was documenting everything. I created a burner email. Sent every file, photo, screenshot, and financial record to it, organized in folders by category. Affair evidence, financial deception, custody planning. It was meticulous, clinical, like I was preparing a case for court, which, in a way, I was. Meanwhile, I let my lawyer know I wanted full custody. I didn't care about the house, the car, the savings. All I wanted was my kids and my dignity. And he wasn't taking either from me. The real turning point came one Thursday evening. He came home late, again, and said traffic was terrible. I asked him how the quarterly meeting went, and he launched into a long, animated story about budget projections and marketing strategies. I watched him lie with such ease, and I knew right then, he had no soul left in this marriage. He wasn't even trying to make the lies believable. He didn't care. Or maybe he really thought I was that naive. That weak. That broken. But I wasn't. Not anymore. That weekend, while he took the kids to a movie, I opened his second laptop, the one he didn't think I knew existed, and found a hidden folder buried under layers of decoy files. And there it was. Photos of him and Tessa on a beach. Holding hands. Kissing. Playing with her dog. She had a framed picture of them in her apartment. Them. As if they were the real couple. As if I was the side piece. That's when I knew it was time. I scheduled everything. The legal filing, the financial freeze, the email blasts to his family and mine. All set to go at 8 a.m. on a Monday, his birthday. When the day came, I woke up early. Made him breakfast. Smiled. Kissed him like everything was normal. And then I handed him a manila envelope. Inside were the papers. The photos. The lawyer's letter. The custody petition. Everything. And I said, "Happy birthday, Jason." He didn't speak. Not at first. Just sat there, flipping through page after page like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. And then he looked up at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. And I said, You should probably go pack a bag. My attorney said you've got 48 hours to vacate. He tried to stammer something, deny it, shift blame. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't his audience. I wasn't his emotional support system. I wasn't his fool. Not anymore. He didn't leave right away. He just sat there, gripping the envelope like it was radioactive, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to form some kind of excuse, some kind of justification for what he'd done. But there was nothing left to say. I stood there in silence, arms crossed, watching the panic settle into his features like ink bleeding into water. For a moment, I wondered if he would beg, cry, maybe even apologize, but instead, he said the one thing that made my blood boil. You weren't supposed to find out. Not I'm sorry. Not I made a mistake. Just that, I wasn't supposed to know. That told me everything. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't regret. This was damage control. And I was done being the damage. I told him again, calmly, that he needed to pack a bag. That my lawyer had already filed the paperwork. That the kids would be staying with me. That he would not be sleeping under my roof again. And when he tried to argue, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply pulled out the second envelope. This one had copies of messages he sent to Tessa, filthy, degrading things he never said to me in 15 years of marriage. Things no father should have on a device that his children sometimes use to play games. He went pale, and then quiet. He finally stood up, walked to the bedroom, and started stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. No goodbyes. No last words. Just silence. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the sky turn pink and gold as the sun came up. And for the first time in years, I breathed, really breathed. No lies. No guessing. No pretending. Just the clean, sharp air of freedom. When the kids came downstairs, I was already making pancakes. My daughter asked where Daddy went, and I said he had to go on a long trip. Not a lie, but not the whole truth either. I wasn't ready to give them that yet. Not until I had the words that wouldn't scar them. Over the next week, the fallout began. His parents called me in a fury, accusing me of destroying the family. His mother called me vindictive. I calmly forwarded the folder of photos. After that, they didn't call again. Tessa tried messaging me too. She actually had the nerve to write, "You can't keep him from his kids." I didn't respond. I just sent her contact info to my lawyer. Jason, meanwhile, was unraveling. He tried to freeze our accounts. I had already moved the money. He tried to take the car. I had changed the title. He tried to come back. I had changed the locks. Every move he made, I was 10 steps ahead. Because while he was living his double life, I had quietly become someone he never expected. A woman who could burn it all down and not flinch. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a mother, a survivor, and a woman who refused to be erased. And this was only the beginning. As the weeks passed, everything changed. Jason stopped trying to manipulate me. It wasn't that he had become any less arrogant or self-righteous. It was more that he had finally realized there was no point in playing his usual games. There were no more tearful phone calls begging for reconciliation, no more promises of change. Instead, I received a quiet resignation from him, one that made the air in our house feel like it had been sucked out. It wasn't relief, it was an emptiness I couldn't quite describe. But what struck me most wasn't that Jason had given up. It was how little I cared. There was no longer the woman who had once been desperate to save her marriage. No longer the person who had spent sleepless nights wondering what went wrong, doubting herself, questioning every fight, every unspoken word. That person was gone, and in her place was a woman who stood firm in her decision. But even though I was steady on the outside, inside, I was still learning how to navigate this new version of my life. One of the hardest parts, I realized, was telling our children. I had thought I could avoid it, somehow shelter them from the harshness of the truth, but they were too smart, too perceptive. My daughter started asking more questions. She was only 8, but she had already noticed the tension, the absence of Jason at home. "When is Daddy coming back?" she asked one evening, sitting on the floor with her drawing books, her eyes wide and hopeful. I paused, feeling the weight of her innocent gaze. How could I explain to her what I still couldn't fully comprehend myself? How could I tell her that the man she adored, the one who had always been the father figure she looked up to, was the same man who had betrayed our family? Instead, I told her the truth, just the basics. That Daddy was going away for a while because sometimes grown-ups don't always make the best choices. That he needed to work on himself. She nodded solemnly, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. The small spark of disbelief that comes with the realization that things aren't always as they seem. And that, right there, is the moment I knew I would never be the same. Everything about who I had been, the woman who trusted, who forgave, who stood by her husband no matter what, was gone. And in its place, a new strength emerged. It wasn't something I had asked for, but it was mine now. I realized, too, that no matter how much he begged, how much he pleaded, how many promises he made, there was nothing Jason could do to take that away from me. I was untouchable in my own way. I had moved on before I even realized it. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. I was looking forward, to my own future, to my children's future, to the life I would build without him in it. As I stepped further into this new life, there were moments where I felt like I was walking a tightrope. My friends, my family, everyone had their opinions. Some said I was being too harsh, too quick to end things. They couldn't see what I had seen, couldn't feel the weight of the lies, the betrayal. Others, the ones who truly knew me, supported me with an unwavering certainty, but it didn't make the decision any easier. There were still days when I questioned myself. Days when the loneliness would creep in like a shadow, making me second-guess everything. I'd wonder if I had made a mistake, if I was too quick to close the door on everything we had. But then I would remember. The secret meetings, the lies, the way he would touch me like it didn't matter. I had given everything to Jason. My trust, my heart, my time, and he had thrown it all away. So no, I wasn't too quick to close the door. The only thing I was guilty of was wanting to survive. And then came the moment when I finally saw him, Jason, standing at the front door. His face was drawn, tired, eyes dark from nights spent lying to himself and everyone else. He had come to see the kids, something that he had started doing more often as the months went by. I'd watched him from a distance, trying to figure out where we stood. What I had been avoiding, the inevitable conversation, was now upon us. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I felt the anger rise within me, but I pushed it down. There was no use in getting angry anymore. That was what he wanted, to see me lose control. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. "About what?" I asked, crossing my arms over my chest. I saw his eyes flicker briefly to the ground before meeting mine. "I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but he paused, his words faltering as if unsure of how to approach me, how to fix everything he had broken. "I've been going to therapy. I've been trying to change." His voice trailed off, and for a second, I saw the man I once knew. But it was a fleeting image. The man in front of me now was a stranger, a man who had shattered everything. "You think therapy is going to fix what you've done?" I asked. "You think it's enough to erase everything? All the lies, all the hurt?" I took a step closer, forcing him to look me in the eyes. "You don't get to fix this. You don't get to come back and pretend like you can undo what you've done." There was a long silence, and in that moment, I realized something important. I had already moved on. I had already healed in ways I hadn't thought possible. Jason had come to beg for forgiveness, but what he didn't realize was that I no longer needed his approval, his apologies, or his presence. I had already found peace in letting go. "You're too late," I said, my voice steady. "And honestly, I don't know who you are anymore. I'm not waiting for you to change. I'm moving on." The words hung in the air, a final declaration that there was no going back. Jason looked at me for a long time, his face a mask of pain and regret. I knew he wanted to say something else, to convince me that he could be different. But there was nothing left to say. I had made my choice. And as he turned to leave, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The kind that only comes when you know you've done the right thing. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly free. The chains were gone. The fear, the anger, they were all behind me. What came next was unknown, but I was ready. I had my children. I had my peace. And now I had my future.